Welcome. Today, we're diving into something that affects millions of people, but is rarely understood. It's not just about relationships, it's about the neuroscience of emotional safety, the psychology of love, and the biology of attachment. Specifically, we're exploring what someone with avoidant attachment actually does when they love you, even when their actions seem cold, distant, or confusing. Avoidants show love by creating space, not through constant closeness. This concept might sound counterintuitive at first, especially when we think of love as a force that draws people together. But for someone with an avoidant attachment style, closeness can trigger a fear response rather than comfort. When someone with avoidant tendencies falls in love, their first instinct might not be to move toward the person they love. Instead, they may pull away, create distance, retreat into solitude. This doesn't mean they don't care. In fact, this behavior is often how they regulate overwhelming feelings of affection, vulnerability, and fear of losing autonomy. The nervous system of an avoidant is conditioned often through early life experiences to associate closeness with unpredictability, pressure, even emotional pain. As such, creating space is a defense mechanism that allows them to process the intensity of love without becoming dysregulated. They may need time alone after deep emotional conversations. They may delay responses not out of disinterest, because they need to calm their system before they can engage meaningfully. They might appear distant after a romantic gesture or seem cold when they actually feel something deeply. This space they create is not a rejection, but an attempt to manage the emotional flood inside them. In neuroscience terms, avoidants are more likely to have heightened activity in the brain regions responsible for detecting social threat when intimacy increases. The amygdala, responsible for fear and threat detection, may become more active during vulnerable relational moments. This can cause them to shut down or escape situations that others might perceive as deeply bonding. The prefrontal cortex, which helps regulate emotional responses, might kick in to suppress expressions of closeness in order to preserve emotional equilibrium. They might retreat not to punish their partner or test love, but because love itself feels unsafe or destabilizing in certain forms. Space becomes their way of staying engaged, paradoxically, by stepping back. When they love someone, they may avoid confrontation or emotional vulnerability, not out of avoidance of the person, but to preserve the relationship from what they subconsciously perceive as a threat to their internal stability. Avoidants also fear engulfment. Unlike anxious types who fear abandonment, avoidants fear losing themselves in another person. So when they love someone, they protect their sense of self by enforcing boundaries and independence. This could look like needing separate time, wanting to sleep alone sometimes, or resisting constant texting. These actions can be misinterpreted as lack of love, but they're actually an attempt to stay functional and emotionally available on their own terms. When someone with an avoidant attachment style falls in love, the stakes are high. Love activates their deepest fears and insecurities. The more they care, the more overwhelmed they may feel. So they take space to think, to feel safe, to make sense of their emotions, and to reduce the risk of overcommitting and then emotionally collapsing. Their behavior might appear inconsistent. One day they're affectionate, the next they seem cold. This inconsistency is not manipulation. It's the product of a nervous system caught between the desire for closeness and the fear of emotional dependence. They might idealize a partner from afar, but get anxious when that partner becomes too emotionally close. So they protect the relationship by withdrawing and returning in cycles. This dance can be exhausting for both partners, but understanding it as a survival strategy rather than rejection can open the door for empathy, healing, and communication. It's important to note that avoidants can love deeply. They may think about their loved ones constantly, feel responsible for their well-being, and make long-term plans in silence. But because emotional expression feels risky, they might hold all of this inside. Creating space is their unconscious way of showing love without risking emotional dysregulation. When an avoidant gives you space or takes space themselves, it doesn't always mean they're leaving. It often means they're trying to stay. The act of stepping back can be a sign they care enough not to destroy the connection by acting out their overwhelm. With time, understanding, and safe communication, avoidants can learn to tolerate more closeness and express love in healthier ways. But initially, distance is their expression of care, their way of holding the relationship steady while managing their own fear-driven impulses. So if you love someone with an avoidant style, or if you are one, recognize that love doesn't always look like togetherness. Sometimes love looks like breathing room, like quiet moments apart, like allowing space so connection can grow without suffocation. It's not absence, it's self-regulation and understanding. That is one of the most powerful shifts you can make in any relationship where love runs deeper than words and stronger than fear. Their nervous system is wired to associate intimacy with vulnerability and danger. This response is not a conscious choice, but rather a deeply embedded biological and psychological reaction developed early in life, usually during childhood. When someone with avoidant attachment begins to experience closeness in a relationship, their nervous system may react as if a threat is present. This is because at some point in their developmental years, intimacy was not experienced as safe or comforting. It may have been unpredictable, conditional, overwhelming, or even invasive. As a result, the brain and body learn to equate closeness with a potential loss of control, self, or emotional security. Instead of drawing near to feel safe, they learn that withdrawing helps them survive emotionally. This becomes their default wiring, especially in moments of emotional vulnerability. The sympathetic nervous system, which governs the fight or flight response, often activates when emotional closeness increases for an avoidant. This can manifest physically in increased heart rate, tension, irritability, or a strong desire to flee the situation. They may not fully understand why, but a deep unease sets in when someone gets too close emotionally. Their body prepares as if danger is near, even though there is no physical threat. This is where miscommunication often arises in relationships. The avoidant person feels under attack or smothered, while their partner might just be trying to connect more deeply. The difference in perception is rooted not in logic, but in neurobiology. An avoidant may intellectually know they care for someone, may even want to be close, but when the moment of connection arises, their body tells them it's unsafe. The reaction can be automatic, shutting down, pulling away, changing the subject, or focusing on a task. These are defense mechanisms meant to restore a sense of internal safety. Rather than being open to intimacy, the brain seeks to protect itself from perceived emotional invasion. This is not a rejection of the other person. It is a self-protective reflex that has become habitual through years of adaptive behavior. It's like having a smoke detector that goes off not just during fires, but every time someone lights a candle. The system is hypersensitive to perceived emotional danger, even when love is being offered. This wiring is particularly influenced by early attachment experiences with caregivers. If a child learns that emotional expression results in punishment, ridicule, or neglect, they adapt by turning inward. They suppress their emotional needs and create distance as a form of self-preservation. Over time, the nervous system gets used to this pattern. It becomes difficult for the adult version of that child to feel safe when being emotionally open or dependent. The closer someone tries to get, the more the alarm system is triggered. This can confuse partners who believe that love should bring people closer, not push them apart. But for avoidance, love that becomes too emotionally intense activates the very fear that connection is supposed to soothe. In adult relationships, this plays out in many subtle ways. An avoidant might delay replying to a vulnerable message, not out of cruelty, but because their system goes into overdrive when faced with emotional content. They may prefer spending time with their partner doing by side activities rather than engaging in direct emotional conversations. This doesn't mean they're indifferent. It means they're trying to stay emotionally regulated while being close in a way that feels manageable. Emotional closeness, eye contact, like "I need you." These can all register as threats to an avoidant nervous system. So instead of leaning in, they lean away. That lean isn't always about not caring. It's about the system trying to restore equilibrium in a moment that feels overwhelming. Understanding this is crucial for building empathy in relationships with avoidant partners. Their withdrawal is not about punishing the other person or playing games. It is often about avoiding the inner panic that intimacy triggers. Their body feels under siege, even though their heart may long for connection. This duality creates a tug of war inside the person, the desire for love battling with the fear of emotional exposure. Left unchecked, this can lead to relational cycles of pursuit and withdrawal, where one partner seeks closeness and the avoidant instinctively retreats. With awareness and consistent, safe experiences, this wiring can begin to shift. The nervous system is plastic. It can rewire. Slowly, with safe, predictable, non-intrusive closeness, the avoidant individual can learn that intimacy doesn't always lead to harm or engulfment. But that process takes time, patience, and trust. It involves calming the alarm bells inside the body that go off at the first sign of deep emotional connection. It requires space to breathe, regulate, and choose responses instead of reacting out of fear. This healing is possible, but it must be grounded in understanding rather than pressure. So when an avoidant pulls away during moments of love, remember their nervous system isn't rejecting the other person. It's reacting to a perceived emotional threat. The goal is not to force closeness, but to create safety. When they feel safe, they come closer, not always quickly and not always obviously, but steadily and sincerely. Love for the avoidant is not about intensity. It's about sustainability. And when they feel safe enough to stay present, their love can be just as deep, enduring, and meaningful as anyone else's. Acts of service and indirect care are their primary expressions of love. For avoidantly attached individuals, open verbal expressions of affection, frequent physical closeness, or emotionally vulnerable moments can feel threatening or uncomfortable. However, this does not mean they are incapable of love. Instead, they often express it in quieter, more practical ways that feel emotionally safer. Instead of saying, "I love you," frequently or initiating deep conversations about feelings, an avoidant partner may show their love by doing things that improve your life, protect your well-being, or solve problems for you without needing praise or acknowledgement. These actions may seem small or ordinary on the surface, but for someone who struggles with emotional closeness, they are significant demonstrations of connection and loyalty. These individuals might take care of tasks you've mentioned in passing, fix things around the house, or ensure that your daily routines are smoother. They may go out of their way to bring you food when you're sick, quietly remember important dates, or take care of something that causes you stress. Not because they were asked, because they were paying attention in their own careful, observant way. Avoidants often prefer doing over saying. Their actions are filtered through a logic that says, if I help you function better or protect you from distress, that is how I show you I care. For them, love is demonstrated by reliability, responsibility, and tangible support rather than emotional declarations or frequent closeness. This expression of care can often go unnoticed, especially by partners who crave emotional intimacy and words of affirmation. An avoidance version of "I love you" might be warming up your car on a cold morning or making sure your favorite snack is in the house, but they may not follow it with affectionate eye contact or cuddles. These acts are rooted in the idea of support from a distance, helping without hovering, showing care without needing to open up emotionally. For avoidance, love means being there without overwhelming the other person or being overwhelmed themselves. This balance is crucial because their nervous system is often on high alert in emotionally charged situations. Acts of service offer a channel of giving that doesn't destabilize their emotional regulation. It's important to understand that this isn't about being emotionally cold or unfeeling. In fact, the very choice to show up through service reflects deep emotional investment, just channeled in a form that avoids direct vulnerability. Avoidants often feel safer when they are doing something practical because it allows them to maintain a sense of control while contributing meaningfully to the relationship. They can love you and still feel uneasy about prolonged eye contact or deep emotional talks. They can be devoted while keeping a layer of emotional distance. These apparent contradictions make their love difficult to decode without understanding the core emotional mechanics behind their behavior. When avoidants are in love, they may monitor your needs more closely than they let on. They listen even when they seem distracted. They watch how you react to stress and remember what helps you cope. They create systems of care, often silently, to support your peace of mind. They're more comfortable anticipating needs than talking about feelings, more confident managing logistics than emotions. This is not indifference. It's how they survive emotional intimacy without being overwhelmed by it. They often struggle with being emotionally seen, but they excel at being emotionally useful. Their version of love is rooted in functionality, not flourish. In conflict, they may withdraw emotionally, but still carry out tasks that show they haven't checked out completely. They may not engage in a heart-to-heart conversation, but they will ensure your phone is charged or your schedule is intact. This type of indirect emotional presence can feel confusing if you're expecting warmth in the form of emotional closeness. However, understanding this love language can shift the entire relational dynamic. Recognizing these gestures as love can prevent misinterpretations that lead to unnecessary disconnection or resentment. Avoidants tend to dislike dependence, both being dependent and having others depend on them emotionally. So when they choose to be consistently helpful, reliable, or even self-sacrificing in subtle ways, that's a sign of trust and deep investment. They are managing their discomfort with emotional closeness by offering what feels safe and solid to them: service, protection, structure. And over time, as they feel safer in the relationship, these actions can evolve into slightly more open expressions. But the foundation will almost always be acts of care that support from a place of distance, not intrusion. Their actions speak in a quieter language, and to hear it, one must slow down and observe with intention. Watch for the ways they make your life easier, the sacrifices they don't talk about, the way they try to prevent your discomfort. These are not just habits. They are their version of connection. For an avoidant, love is often something they build into your world subtly, reliably, and carefully. And though it may not always come wrapped in emotional expression, it is no less real, committed, or sincere. They struggle with verbal affection, but will protect, support, and remain loyal in subtle ways. This aspect of avoidant attachment often leads to confusion in relationships because the absence of verbal reassurance can be misinterpreted as indifference or emotional coldness. In reality, many avoidantly attached individuals experience deep feelings, but have learned over time that expressing those feelings, especially in words, is risky. Through childhood experiences where emotional openness led to shame, punishment, or disappointment, or through early relationships where vulnerability was met with rejection, they internalize the belief that love should be private, controlled, and cautious. This makes them less likely to express, "I love you," openly, initiate romantic conversations, engage in emotional vulnerability, even with someone they care about deeply. Despite this, avoidants often express their love through a strong sense of responsibility. They may quietly assume roles in a relationship that offer protection, consistency, and practical support. For example, they might be the ones who check in on you after a stressful event, subtly rearrange their plans to accommodate your needs, or who step up during a crisis without needing to be asked. These behaviors may seem unromantic to some, but to the avoidant, they are powerful demonstrations of loyalty and care. Their protective instinct is often active even when they are emotionally distant. If you are threatened, mistreated, or harmed, they will likely step in with calm strength. This instinct to defend and provide solutions is one of the clearest signs of love from an avoidantly attached person. Their version of support often comes through presence, not words. They might not say, "I'm here for you," in moments of sadness, but they'll sit next to you while you cry, offer you food, or fix something that's broken in your environment. These actions may not be accompanied by emotional processing or deep dialogue, but they are grounded in a steady commitment to your well-being. For avoidance, emotional overload is a real concern, so they choose actions that stabilize the situation instead of exploring its emotional depth. This can be deeply misunderstood unless seen through the lens of attachment behaviors and nervous system responses. Loyalty is also a strong indicator of love in avoidant individuals. While they may fear emotional entanglement or dependence, once they choose to commit, they often do so with sincerity and resilience. They may not speak about their commitment often, but they show it by sticking through difficulties, staying consistent over time, and being dependable in key areas of life. For someone who struggles with vulnerability, the act of staying, of not running away when things get complicated, is a major emotional investment. Their version of "I'm not going anywhere" is shown in their reliability and predictability rather than grand gestures or declarations. This type of loyalty is subtle but powerful, and it's a cornerstone of how avoidants maintain connection while managing their discomfort with closeness. What's important to understand is that avoidants often experience internal emotional conflict. They want to be close but fear being engulfed. They desire love but are wary of dependence. This creates a behavioral pattern that might seem contradictory. They might express support and protection in one moment and seem aloof or withdrawn in the next. This inconsistency doesn't mean they're playing games. It reflects the push-pull dynamic of a nervous system trying to balance the need for connection with the instinct for emotional safety. When they pull back, it's often a way of recalibrating, of managing their emotional energy so that they can continue showing up in the ways that feel manageable. Avoidants are also deeply aware of unspoken needs. They might anticipate what their partner needs without being told, not because they are emotionally distant, because they have trained themselves to observe and solve problems quietly. This hyper-independence extends to how they offer care. They may not want to talk about feelings, but they will take care of the things that make life harder. And while they may not say they love you every day, they may do the same quiet things for you every day, unwavering consistency. Over time, this quiet pattern becomes its own language, one rooted in presence rather than proclamation. The struggle with verbal affection doesn't mean an avoidant person is incapable of developing that skill. In safe, patient, and non-pressuring environments, they may begin to open up slowly, sharing more thoughts and emotions as they build trust and as their nervous system learns that vulnerability is not inherently dangerous. But their foundation will almost always be nonverbal. built through small behaviors, patterns of care, and long-term loyalty rather than open emotional expression. Understanding this allows for greater compassion in relationships and helps avoid misinterpreting their actions as lack of love. So while an avoidant might not write long love letters, pour out their feelings, or engage in deep emotional conversations regularly, they will be the one who shows up when it counts. They will fix the things they know you hate dealing with. They will defend you when you're not in the room. They will quietly protect your peace, guard your space, and offer calm in moments of emotional storm. This is love expressed not through verbal vulnerability, but through steady presence, quiet protection, and unwavering support. The kind that builds trust over time, not with words, with action,